The Treasurer asked us to look at the system of early childhood education and care, in other words childcare, and find out what was wrong with it and make recommendations to the government about how to fix it in the best interests of child development and for workforce participation. Parents certainly told us that the childcare system didn't meet the needs of all families, in that there are long waiting lists, there are inflexible hours, there are financial disincentives to mothers working more hours, insufficient support for children with additional needs. Those are sort of a summary of some of the main concerns. The cost of supporting the childcare system is rising fast. It's currently $7 billion and certainly unsustainable into the future for taxpayers. Parents in the sector told us that the current childcare system was vital for both child development and for workforce participation, and they wanted to ensure that we got it right in fixing it. We recommend a single child-based early care and learning subsidy for up to 100 hours per fortnight paid to the provider of the parent's choice. It would be based on the reasonable costs of care, it would be means tested, the parents would be subject to an activity test, and it would be paid depending on the age and type of childcare service the child was attending. An activity test is whether the parents are working a certain number of hours, say 24 hours a fortnight. If the grandparent is the primary carer for the children, they meet the activity test. People who are on carers payments or disability support pensions, and people who have registered for Newstart or they're exempt in some other way from the activity test. The way we're proposing it in the draft report is that low-income families would receive up to 90% of the reasonable cost of care, and that would decline as income rises, but to a minimum of 30%. The subsidy will be available to cover approved nannies, but not au pairs. But also we are removing the restrictions on the number of occasional care places and the hours that centres can open. So this should lead to greater flexibility, greater accessibility and more childcare places available in the system. We support retaining the National Quality Framework, but want to see it extended to cover all subsidised services, and we believe that it should be a bit more flexible as well. What we're proposing for children with additional needs is that there be an additional top-up subsidy in addition to the mainstream subsidy, again related to the reasonable cost of their additional need, plus there'd be some extra funding for providers to apply for, which could improve their skills base or provide additional facilities. We've also recommended increasing the number of hours for which children with additional needs would be funded. For preschools, we've recommended continuation of the universal access to preschool in the year before school for 15 hours a week, 40 weeks a year. In the long run, we'd like the states and territories to take that over completely. Well, after-school care is a particularly important and particularly for workforce participation. We've recommended that all principals be encouraged to make sure after-school care is available for school children, and we've also suggested that after-school care be extended for preschool children as well. We've done some preliminary economic modelling, and we've shown there would be the equivalent of about 165,000 full-time people available to enter the workforce, and that would lead to a small increase in GDP. In relation to the proposed paid parental leave scheme, we believe that additional funding could go instead into early childcare and learning to ensure workforce participation objectives are maintained and that there's adequate funding for children with additional needs. For children in rural, regional and remote areas, we're recommending, of course, the mainstream subsidies, but also nannies and au pairs will be more readily available to them. We're recommending lifting the restrictions on occasional care places and childcare centre opening hours. As well, we're recommending viability payments for mainstream services that have fluctuating child attendances. Plus, we're recommending some block funding for particularly disadvantaged communities like Indigenous communities, and also funding to help childcare centres currently receiving block funding transition to mainstream funding. This is a draft report, and what we'd like people to do is have a look at what we've said and the recommendations and tell us where we got it right, but also where we got it wrong and how we should fix it.